When two worlds collide, a night of steel, rain, and reckoning in Weatherfield, it was the crossover no one knew they needed, until everything went terribly wrong. In a bold, stunt-heavy super episode, Coronation Street and Emmerdale brought together a constellation of soap royalty. From Weatherfield came David Platt, Jack P. Shepherd, Shona Platt, Julia Goulding, Tracy Barlow, Kate Ford, and Carla Connor, Alison King. Joining them from the Dales were Kane Dingle, Jeff Hordley, Charity Dingle, Emma Atkins, Robert Sugden, Ryan Hawley, and Aaron Dingle, Danny Miller. Their worlds collided on a rain-lashed stretch of motorway in the dead of night. Dead being the operative word, at least one life would be lost. And where there is death in Soapland, justice is never far behind. By morning, Coronation Street confirmed what viewers had begun to fear. One resident would be taken into custody and compelled to face charges at Weatherfield Police Station. The question was not if, but who. Becky Swain, the unlikely suspect. The finger first pointed toward an unexpected name, PC Becky Swain. In the hours before the crash, Becky appeared to be standing at the threshold of something hopeful. She had finally persuaded her ex-wife Lisa, Vicky Myers, to consider reconciliation and a fresh start abroad with their daughter Betsy, Sydney Martin. Lisa agreed, reluctantly, only after her relationship with Carlos had collapsed and he had left for Lanzarote, or so she thought. What Lisa didn't know was that Detective Constable Kit Green wanted answers that night, and nothing else. Carla Connor's disappearance sat on his desk like cold tea, unanswered and unsettling. Following a trail of CCTV gaps, unanswered calls, and small, stubborn lies, Kit traced the narrowing path back to Becky. It felt less like a chase than a reckoning, one he owed to a friend, a road full of secrets. The minibus carrying the wedding party hummed with the loose warmth of drink and laughter. Todd Grimshaw pressed himself against a window that refused to give anything away, his hands trembling in a way Weatherfield had never seen before. Theo Silverton's late arrival hung over the group like distant thunder. Billy Mayhew promised to help Todd with his boxes, small acts of kindness that would soon take on unbearable weight. Elsewhere, Carl Webster chose a lonelier route home. Carl was a man shaped by knots of resentment, history, and unresolved fury. Debbie's wedding had not soothed him, it had reignited embers. Words were exchanged like weapons. Alcohol loosened his tongue and tightened his grip on the wheel as he drove off into the rain. On the M62, between Hull and home, intention and accident lined up like falling dominoes. The moment everything changed, it began, everyone would later agree, with a single distraction. Becky was driving Lisa and Betsy toward the ferry when her phone vibrated. One word lit up the screen, Carla. Lisa answered. Carla's voice sounded distant, further away than any of them realized. Becky glanced down. 10 years in uniform had trained her to read danger in seconds. She looked away from the road for one breath. That breath stretched into disaster. A lorry loomed. Brake lights flared. Becky swerved, a reflex honed over years of saving others. But the road, slick and indifferent, did not care who meant well. The minibus appeared at the crossroads. Billy sang off key, smiling, until Todd's voice broke mid-sentence. Theo reached out instinctively. Carl slammed his brakes, then swerved in a last, desperate act of mercy. Headlights crossed. Metal screamed. The crash was not clean. It was violent, chaotic, unforgiving. Glass rained. Steel folded. The minibus rolled, scattering lives into confusion and silence. Becky's car spun, hit the barrier. Witnesses would later swear they saw Carla in the back seat, having climbed in earlier when Becky stopped by a lay-by. Carl's vehicle clipped the minibus, launching it. When the smoke cleared, the rain kept falling. The dead do not move. Billy Mayhew was gone. The man who had always offered hymns when hearts were breaking had no final song of his own. Debbie's grief cut through the crowd like glass. Carla lay motionless, blood in her hair, her strength rewritten into fragility. Others, too, would never rise again. A young man silenced forever. A child left with a lifetime of unanswered questions. Emergency services arrived with brutal precision. Kit Green was there within minutes, notebook in hand, walking the wreckage like a rosary. When he looked at Becky, a colleague, a woman he had trusted, something broke quietly inside him. Justice under fluorescent light. At the hospital, wounds were stitched and silences deepened. Lisa held Betsy's hand like an anchor. Becky, for the first time in her career, found herself without answers. By morning, the press descended. What began as a tragic accident hardened into outrage. A police officer at the wheel. The word betrayal echoed across headlines. CCTV footage. Witness accounts. A black box from Carl's car revealing speed and impact. Phone records confirming Becky was on a call moments before the crash. The coroner's report cited multiple causes, but the mosaic pointed uncomfortably toward recklessness. Midweek, the shock landed. PC Becky Swain was arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. The image of her in handcuffs was what the papers wanted, and what Weatherfield could not bear. A town divided. Some cried betrayal. Others demanded due process. Candlelit vigils honored Billy and the dead, while doors stayed closed and gossip flourished. Becky did not look like a villain in interview. She looked exhausted. She told police everything. How she found Carla earlier that day, frightened and hiding. How she tried to help. How the distraction lasted only a heartbeat. Intent, however, does not erase consequence. Further revelations complicated the picture. Forensics showed Carl had been speeding. Toxicology revealed alcohol in his system. Witnesses spoke of arguments, of tension, of choices stacking upon choices. The inquest would later call it what it was, a multi-causal tragedy, born of small negligence and irreversible decisions. But the law still demanded its due. What Weatherfield learned. Becky was charged. Released on bail. Watched. Kit Green found himself holding two truths, evidence and memory. Law and compassion. He would testify, not as a friend, but as an officer. Funerals followed. Names spoken like prayers. Billy's hymn book lay open. Todd learned grief could be held, carefully, fiercely. There was no singular villain. Only people, history, and terrible luck converging on one strip of wet tarmac. Weatherfield learned that justice and loss do not move at the same pace, and never arrive together. And Becky Swain would be remembered not just as a police officer, but as a woman whose life changed in a single second.